The dust trail on the horizon warned of someone approaching, but it was the children, three little figures huddled against the late summer heat, that caught Hunter Reid's attention first. They staggered alongside a woman whose proud posture couldn't hide her exhaustion, her worn dress hanging loose on her frame as she pulled a small cart containing their meager possessions toward the town of Rivercross, Wyoming Territory, 1878. Katherine Morrison wiped sweat from her brow, her chestnut hair falling from its pins as she urged her children forward. "Just a little further," she whispered, though her parched throat made the words barely audible. It had been 2 days since their last proper meal, and she'd given what little water remained to her children: 8-year-old Emma, 6-year-old Samuel, and 4-year-old Lily. The journey from Chicago had depleted everything she had. Her husband Robert's death from consumption had left her with nothing but debts and hungry mouths. The promise of work at her cousin's boarding house in Wyoming had seemed like salvation, until she'd arrived in Cheyenne to discover her cousin had sold the establishment months ago and moved to California. Now, as they approached Rivercross, Katherine had exactly 17 cents to her name and children who hadn't stopped asking when they could eat again. Hunter watched from the porch of his general store as the small family made their way down the main street. At 34, he'd spent most of his life in Rivercross, building the store from nothing after returning from the war. His time as a cavalry scout had left him with a slight limp and a wariness that kept most people at arm's length, but it had also given him an eye for those in genuine need. "Mr. Reid," Sheriff Davis nodded as he stepped onto the porch, "looks like we've got newcomers." Hunter nodded, his eyes fixed on the woman as she paused, clearly uncertain where to go. "Appears so. Town's got enough mouths to feed with the drought this summer." "Don't need more strays," the sheriff muttered. Something in Hunter bristled at the words. "We manage," he said flatly, stepping off the porch. The sheriff's warning hung in the air behind him as he approached the family. Katherine saw the tall man approaching and straightened her spine, gathering her dignity. His weathered face was partially hidden by a neatly trimmed beard, and his broad shoulders filled out a simple cotton shirt. The slight hitch in his gait didn't diminish his commanding presence. "Madam," he said, tipping his hat, "you look like you've come a fair distance." "We have," Katherine replied, placing a protective hand on Emma's shoulder. "We're looking for work and lodging." Hunter glanced at the children, noting their sunken cheeks and dull eyes. The youngest girl was clutching a threadbare doll, her tiny fingers white from holding it so tightly. "Name's Hunter Reid. I own the general store," he said, gesturing to the building behind him. "Might I ask your name?" "Katherine Morrison. These are my children Emma, Samuel, and Lily." Her voice carried a refinement that spoke of better days. "Pleased to meet you all," Hunter said, smiling briefly at the children. "Mrs. Morrison, forgive my directness, but when was the last time these little ones had a proper meal?" Katherine flushed, embarrassment and pride warring in her expression. "We've been economizing our supplies," Hunter nodded, understanding what she wouldn't say. "Well, it happens I was about to have my midday meal. There's stew warming on the stove in my quarters behind the store." "More than enough for 5. "That's very kind, but we couldn't impose," Katherine began. Even as Samuel's stomach growled audibly, Hunter's eyes softened. "Mrs. Morrison, I don't make offers I don't mean. My table is yours now, at least for today. After you've eaten, we can discuss what might be done about work and lodging." Tears pricked at Katherine's eyes, but she blinked them away. "Thank you, Mr. Reid. We accept your hospitality." Hunter led them around to the back of the store, where a small but tidy cabin adjoined the main building. Inside, the smell of beef stew filled the simple space. A table with 6 chairs occupied one side of the main room, while a pot-bellied stove and preparation area took up the other. A door led to what was presumably his bedroom. "Please sit," Hunter said, motioning to the table as he moved to stir the stew. "There's fresh bread too, and milk for the children." The children looked to their mother, who nodded permission. They scrambled onto chairs as Hunter set out bowls and spoons. "Mr. Reid, Katherine began, but he cut her off gently. "Food first, talk after," he said, filling bowls with the rich stew, And it's just Hunter. Katherine watched her children eat with hungry abandon, accepting her own bowl with murmured thanks. The first spoonful nearly undid her. It had been so long since she'd tasted something so good, something she hadn't had to stretch to feed 4 people. Hunter ate more slowly, observing the family without being obvious about it. The woman was young, likely no more than 28 or 29, though hardship had etched fine lines around her eyes. She was beautiful in a quiet way, with expressive brown eyes and a determined set to her jaw. The children had her features, especially the older girl, who kept watching him with curious, assessing eyes. When the edge had been taken off their hunger, Katherine set down her spoon. "Mr. Reid, Hunter, I want you to know we won't be a burden. I'm looking for honest work. I can cook clean, so." "Whatever's needed," Hunter nodded. "Town's small but growing, not many women with proper education. Your speech tells me you've had schooling." Katherine nodded. "I was a teacher before I married." "That's fortunate," Hunter said. "The town's been trying to establish a proper school. Currently, Mrs. Wallace teaches the children 3 days a week, but she's expecting and won't continue past Christmas." Hope flickered in Katherine's eyes. "Do you think they might consider me for the position?" "It's possible," Hunter said, "but that wouldn't start paying right away." "In the meantime," he hesitated, then continued, "I could use help in the store, nothing permanent yet, but it would provide enough for meals and perhaps a small wage." "And lodging?" Katherine asked, glancing at her children who were now eating slices of bread slathered with butter. "The boarding house has rooms, but they're not cheap," Hunter admitted. "There's a small apartment above the store. It's where I lived before building this place. It's simple, just 2 rooms, but it's clean and weathertight." "We couldn't possibly. It's sitting empty," Hunter interrupted. "Has been for over a year. I'd rather see it used than gathering dust." Katherine studied him, trying to discern his motives. "You're very generous to strangers, Mr. Reid," Hunter shrugged. "I was a stranger here once, and I don't much like seeing children hungry." His eyes flickered to the youngest girl, who was now falling asleep at the table, her doll clutched to her chest. "Besides, I suspect you'll earn your keep and then some." Katherine felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. "Then we accept with gratitude." "I'll work hard, I promise you that." Hunter nodded, standing to clear the bowls. "We'll start tomorrow. For now, let me show you the apartment and you can get settled." The apartment above the store was indeed small, but to Katherine and her children, it seemed like a palace after weeks of uncertain shelter. There was a main room with a small stove, table, and 2 chairs, plus a larger bed that could fit Katherine and Lily. The second room had another bed that would accommodate Emma and Samuel. Simple curtains hung at the windows, and though the furnishings were sparse, everything was clean. "It's not much," Hunter said, watching Katherine's face. "It's perfect," she replied, turning to him with genuine gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you." "No need," he said, suddenly uncomfortable with her gratitude. "I'll have some supplies sent up: bedding, towels, basic food. You can pay me back once you're settled with work." After Hunter left, Katherine sat on the edge of the bed, the enormity of what had just happened washing over her. For the first time since Robert's death, she felt they might actually survive. Emma sat beside her. "Mama, is this our home now?" Katherine wrapped an arm around her daughter. "For now, sweetheart, we're going to be all right." "I like Mr. Reid," Samuel declared, already exploring the small apartment. "He has kind eyes like Papa did." Katherine smiled, though her heart twisted at the mention of her late husband. "Yes, he does seem kind." But as she tucked her exhausted children into bed that evening, Katherine couldn't help wondering what tomorrow would bring. Experience had taught her that kindness often came with conditions. Hunter Reid seemed different, but she'd thought that about others before. Still, as she drifted off to sleep with Lily's warm body curled against hers, Katherine allowed herself to feel something she'd almost forgotten: gratitude. Hunter closed the ledger, the figures blurring before his eyes. It was nearly midnight, but sleep eluded him. He kept thinking of the family upstairs, particularly Katherine, with her proud bearing and determined eyes. She reminded him of the wild roses that grew along the creek, delicate in appearance, but tough enough to survive the harshest winters. "You're a fool, Reid," he muttered to himself, reaching for his pipe. He'd spent 12 years avoiding entanglements, focusing on building his business. The last thing he needed was a woman with 3 children complicating his life. Yet as he puffed his pipe and stared out at the moonlit street, Hunter knew he'd already stepped onto a path that would change everything. Morning came with the scent of coffee drifting down the stairs. Hunter paused at the bottom step, surprised. Following the aroma, he found Katherine in the store's small back room where he kept a coffee pot and supplies for his long days. "Good morning," she said, already dressed in a faded but clean dress, her hair neatly pinned. "I hope you don't mind. I thought making coffee was the least I could do." "Not at all," Hunter replied, accepting the cup she offered. "You're up early. Old habits," she said with a small smile. "The children are still sleeping. I wanted to speak with you about my duties before they wake." Hunter nodded, appreciating her directness. "The store opens at 7. Mostly I need help with inventory, stocking shelves, and serving customers when it gets busy. Nothing complicated." "I can manage that," Katherine said confidently. "I should mention Emma and Samuel will need to attend school when it's in session. Lily is still too young, Mrs. Wallace teaches from 9 until noon, 3 days a week," Hunter explained. "Lily can stay in the back room here while you work. There's space enough and you'll be close by." Katherine's relief was visible. "Thank you, that would be perfect." Hunter found himself wanting to ease her worries further. "There's a widow, Mrs. Jenkins, who watches several of the younger children while their parents work. She might take Lily some days, give you a break." "You seem to have thought of everything," Katherine said, studying him. Hunter shrugged. "Just practical considerations." He glanced at the clock. "Store opens in half an hour. I'll show you the basics before the first customers arrive." The morning passed in a blur of introductions and instructions. Hunter was pleased to discover Katherine was a quick learner, easily grasping the organization system and prices. The children came downstairs mid-morning, wide-eyed at the array of goods in the store. Hunter found himself smiling at their wonder. "Samuel, stop touching everything," Katherine admonished gently when her son reached for a display of pocket knives. "It's all right," Hunter said. "Curiosity is natural." He knelt to Samuel's level. "Those knives are special. Each one has a different type of handle. Would you like to see?" Samuel nodded eagerly, and Hunter carefully showed him the different materials: bone, wood, horn, explaining each one's properties. Katherine watched, something warm unfurling in her chest at the patience he showed her son. By midday, the rhythm of the store was becoming familiar to Katherine. Several townspeople had come in, eyeing her curiously but remaining polite. Hunter introduced her simply as Mrs. Morrison, who's helping at the store, offering no further explanation. When the lunch hour arrived, Hunter closed the store briefly. "Standard practice," he explained. "Town's small enough that most folks know to come before noon or after 1. He insisted on providing lunch fresh bread, cheese, and apples from his personal supplies. As they ate in the back room, Katherine found herself relaxing for the first time in months. "How long have you had this store?" she asked, cutting an apple into slices for Lily. 12 years, Hunter replied. "Started small, just the front room, added on as the town grew." "You've done well for yourself," Katherine observed. A shadow crossed Hunter's face. "Been fortunate. Town's been good to me." "And before that?" she asked, sensing there was more to his story. Hunter hesitated. "Served in the war, cavalry scout mostly, came west afterward like a lot of men." Katherine nodded, understanding he didn't want to elaborate. "My husband fought as well, infantry, the 104th Illinois." Hunter's expression softened. "Difficult times." "Yes," she agreed simply, and a moment of silent understanding passed between them. The afternoon brought a steady stream of customers, many clearly coming more out of curiosity about the new arrivals than any pressing need for supplies. Katherine weathered the scrutiny with grace, answering questions politely but offering little personal information. When Sheriff Davis entered the store late in the day, his gaze lingered on Katherine before settling on Hunter. "Reid, a word," Hunter nodded, following the sheriff outside. Through the window, Katherine could see them in conversation, the sheriff's expression stern as he gestured toward the store. "Is something wrong, Mama?" Emma asked, sensing her mother's tension. No, sweetheart, Katherine assured her, though she wasn't certain it was true. She busied herself reorganizing a display of canned goods, keeping one eye on the door. When Hunter returned, his expression was neutral, but Katherine noticed a tightness around his eyes. "Everything all right?" she asked quietly when he passed her. "Fine," he said shortly, then seemed to catch himself. More gently he added, "Sheriff was just being cautious. Small towns can be wary of newcomers." Katherine understood the unspoken message. "He doesn't think you should have hired me." Hunter's eyes met hers directly. "What I do with my business is my concern, not his." The certainty in his voice eased something in Katherine's chest. "Thank you." As closing time approached, Hunter noticed Katherine's increasing fatigue. The children, too, were becoming restless after being confined to the store all day. "Why don't you take them for a walk?" he suggested. "Show them the town a bit. I can finish up here." Katherine hesitated. "Are you sure? I don't want to leave you with all the work." "Go on," he encouraged. "Follow the main street to the end and you'll find the creek." "Nice spot to sit for a while. Dinner's at 6. "You don't need to feed us again," Katherine protested. "I can prepare something from the supplies you provided." Hunter shook his head. "I always cook enough for leftovers anyway. Besides, we should discuss plans for tomorrow." Recognizing the futility of arguing, Katherine gathered the children and headed out into the late afternoon sunshine. The town was small but tidy, with a main street lined by various businesses: the saloon, a small hotel, the blacksmith, and several other establishments. People nodded politely as they passed, some offering curious smiles to the children. The creek was just as Hunter had described, a peaceful spot where the water tumbled over smooth stones. The children immediately removed their shoes to wade in the shallow edges, their laughter rising in the quiet air. Katherine sat on a large rock, watching them play. For the first time in months, they looked like children again, not the solemn-faced little adults they'd become through necessity. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" came a female voice. Katherine turned to find an older woman approaching, a basket of laundry balanced on her hip. "Mrs. Wallace," the woman introduced herself. "I teach the school. You must be Mrs. Morrison. News travels fast here." "Katherine, please," she replied, standing to greet the woman properly. Mrs. Wallace set down her basket with a sigh of relief, her pregnant state now obvious. "Thank goodness. I've been hoping someone new would come along. These little ones need proper schooling, and this little one," she patted her rounded belly, "has other ideas for my future." They chatted easily, Mrs. Wallace explaining the makeshift school situation and expressing genuine enthusiasm at Katherine's teaching background. "The town council meets next week. You should come and introduce yourself. We've been setting aside money for a proper teacher." By the time Katherine returned to the store with the children, her spirits were considerably lighter. Hunter had closed up and was in his quarters, the smell of cooking filling the air. "Just in time," he said, looking up from the stove where a pot of beans simmered alongside pan-fried potatoes and bacon. "Hope you're hungry." "Always," Samuel announced, earning a smile from Hunter. As they ate, Katherine shared her encounter with Mrs. Wallace. "She thinks the council might be interested in hiring me for the teaching position." "That would be good," Hunter agreed. "The children need more than 3 half-days a week." Town's growing 14 school-age children now, with more coming. "It wouldn't start until after Mrs. Wallace's baby arrives," Katherine pointed out. "I'll need other work until then." "Store keeps me busy enough for 2, Hunter assured her. "And with fall coming, folks will be stocking up for winter. Could use the help." The matter settled, they fell into comfortable conversation. Hunter drew out the children with questions about their interests and gentle teasing that soon had even shy Lily giggling. Katherine watched, something warm and dangerous growing in her chest. It had been so long since they'd been part of a normal evening, with good food and easy conversation. Later, as she tucked the children into bed in their new quarters, Emma voiced what Katherine had been trying not to think. "Mr. Reid is nice, Mama, like having a papa again." Katherine smoothed her daughter's hair. "He is kind to help us, but don't get too attached, sweetheart. This is temporary just until we get established." But as she lay in bed that night, listening to Lily's soft breathing beside her, Katherine wondered who she was really warning, Emma or herself. The days fell into a comfortable routine. Katherine worked in the store during the day, learning the business quickly. Emma and Samuel attended school on the days it was in session, and Lily either played quietly in the back room or visited Mrs. Jenkins, who had taken a shine to the little girl. Hunter found himself impressed by Katherine's capabilities. She had a natural way with customers, remembering their preferences and making suggestions that often led to additional sales. Her organizational skills had already improved the store's inventory system, and her elegant handwriting was much more legible than his in the ledgers. More surprisingly, he found himself enjoying her company. She was intelligent and well-read, with opinions on everything from politics to literature. In the evenings, after the children were in bed, they often talked for hours, Hunter smoking his pipe while Katherine mended clothing or prepared lessons for the potential teaching position. Katherine, too, was surprised by how comfortable she felt in Hunter's presence. Unlike many men she'd known, he listened when she spoke and valued her thoughts. He treated her children with respect and patience, often taking time to show Samuel small skills whittling a stick, tying special knots, identifying birds by their calls. The town gradually accepted their presence, though Katherine was aware of occasional whispers. Some, like Mrs. Wallace and the kindly Mrs. Jenkins, were openly welcoming. Others, including Sheriff Davis, remained coolly polite. "Don't mind Davis," Hunter told her one evening as they discussed the town's dynamics. "He's cautious by nature, does his job well enough." "He doesn't approve of me being here," Katherine observed. Hunter's expression hardened slightly. "As I said before, it's not his concern." Katherine studied him in the lamplight, his features softened by the golden glow. "Why did you help us that day? You didn't know us." Hunter was silent for a long moment. "I knew enough," he finally said. "Saw a woman doing her best for her children, reminded me of my mother." It was the first time he'd mentioned his family, and Katherine waited, sensing there was more. "She raised 4 of us alone after my father died in a mining accident," Hunter continued, his voice quieter. "Worked herself to the bone. Nobody helped her." He looked up, meeting Katherine's eyes. "I decided long ago I wouldn't turn away from someone who needed help if I could give it." "Your mother raised a good man," Katherine said softly. Hunter looked away, uncomfortable with the praise. "She did her best. That's all anyone can do." The moment hung between them, fragile and meaningful. Katherine felt something shift, a barrier lowering that she hadn't fully recognized was there. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Katherine was arranging a display of fabrics when the bell over the door jangled. Looking up, she found herself facing an elegantly dressed woman whose expensive attire seemed out of place in the modest store. "Good morning," Katherine greeted her. "May I help you find something?" The woman assessed Katherine with cool blue eyes. "I'm looking for Hunter Reid." "He's in the storeroom. I'll fetch him for you," Katherine offered, already moving toward the back. "No need to trouble yourself," the woman replied, her voice carrying a note of authority that stopped Katherine in her tracks. "I know my way." Before Katherine could respond, the woman swept past her and through the curtain to the storeroom. Moments later, Katherine heard Hunter's surprised voice, though she couldn't make out the words. When they emerged several minutes later, Hunter's expression was guarded. "Mrs. Morrison, this is Miss Victoria Caldwell. Her father owns the bank and several businesses in town." Victoria offered a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How do you do, Mrs. Morrison? Hunter tells me you're helping out temporarily." Something in her tone made Katherine straighten her spine. "Yes, while I prepare to take over the teaching position." "How enterprising," Victoria said, her gaze flicking over Katherine's simple dress. "Hunter, don't forget about dinner Saturday. Father is expecting you." With a final assessing look at Katherine, she departed, leaving a cloud of expensive perfume in her wake. Hunter busied himself rearranging items that didn't need rearranging, avoiding Katherine's questioning gaze. "Friend of yours?" Katherine finally asked, keeping her tone light. Hunter sighed. "Victoria's father was one of my first supporters in town. Loaned me money to expand the store years back. They've been generous." I see, Katherine said, understanding what remained unspoken. Victoria Caldwell clearly had designs on Hunter, and her father's influence in town made her someone to be reckoned with. It's just dinner, Hunter said, as if reading her thoughts. Banking business, mostly, Katherine nodded, returning to her work. Of course, it's none of my affair. But later that day, when Mrs. Jenkins came to collect Lily for her usual visit, the older woman provided more context. Saw Victoria Caldwell coming out of the store, Mrs. Jenkins commented as she helped Lily with her sweater. That woman's been trying to catch Hunter for years. Her father's determined to see them married before he retires. Mr. Reid's personal life is his own business, Katherine replied, trying to sound unconcerned. Mrs. Jenkins gave her a knowing look. Hunter's a good man, too good for Victoria if you ask me. She wants his store because it's the perfect location for the ladies' boutique she dreams of opening. She patted Katherine's hand. Just so you know what you're dealing with, dear. That evening, Katherine was quieter than usual as they ate dinner. Hunter noticed but didn't press, busy helping Samuel with a small wooden horse he was attempting to carve. After the children were in bed, Hunter found Katherine sitting on the small balcony outside the apartment, wrapped in a shawl against the autumn chill. "May I join you?" he asked. Katherine nodded, making space on the narrow bench. For a while they sat in companionable silence, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. "Victoria's father wants us to marry," Hunter said suddenly. "Has for years." Katherine kept her eyes on the stars. "And what do you want?" Hunter was quiet so long that Katherine thought he might not answer. Finally, he sighed. "I want peace, a simple life, someone who sees me, not what I represent." "And what do you represent?" Katherine asked softly. "Stability, respectability, a successful business in a prime location." There was a weariness in his voice that tugged at Katherine's heart. "Those aren't bad things," she observed. "No," he agreed, "but they're not reasons to marry." Katherine turned to look at him then, his profile strong in the moonlight. "What are the reasons, do you think?" Hunter met her gaze, something vulnerable in his eyes. Companionship, understanding, the feeling that your day isn't complete until you've shared it with someone who cares. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken feelings. Katherine's heart hammered in her chest as Hunter's hand moved to cover hers on the bench. "Katherine," he began, his voice rough with emotion. The sound of breaking glass shattered the moment. They both jumped up, Hunter already moving toward the stairs. "Stay here," he ordered, but Katherine was right behind him. They found Samuel standing in the store, a broken jar of candy at his feet and tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I just wanted one piece. I was going to pay you back from my chore money." Katherine knelt beside him, careful of the glass. "Samuel, you know better than to come down here alone at night." "I couldn't sleep," he hiccuped. "I kept thinking about Papa, and I remembered how he used to bring me candy when I was sad." Katherine gathered him close, her heart breaking. "Oh, my brave boy, I miss him too." Hunter quietly fetched a broom, sweeping up the glass while Katherine comforted her son. When the mess was cleared, he knelt beside them, producing a piece of licorice from his pocket. "Next time you can't sleep," he said gently, "you come find me or your mama. No need to brave the dark store alone." "All right," Samuel nodded, accepting the candy with a watery smile. "Are you angry about the jar?" "No, accidents happen," Hunter assured him. "About you being downstairs alone, a little concerned. It's not safe with all these things that could fall or break." Katherine helped Samuel to his feet. "Let's get you back to bed. You can have the licorice tomorrow." Hunter watched them climb the stairs, the moment on the balcony now broken. But as he checked the store's locks before retiring to his own quarters, he couldn't forget the way Katherine's eyes had softened when he'd spoken of his reasons for marriage, or the warmth of her hand beneath his. Something was happening between them, something neither had anticipated but both were beginning to want. The town council meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday evening, and Katherine spent the days leading up to it preparing a short presentation on her qualifications and teaching philosophy. Hunter helped by watching the children while she organized her thoughts, and Mrs. Wallace provided information about the current students and their needs. On the night of the meeting, Katherine dressed in her best dress, a navy blue cotton that, while not fashionable, was dignified and well made. She pinned her hair in a simple but elegant style and added the cameo brooch that had belonged to her mother. "You look beautiful, Mama," Emma said as Katherine checked her appearance one last time. "Thank you, sweetheart," Katherine replied, trying to calm her nerves. So much depended on this meeting. Hunter was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. His eyes widened slightly when he saw her, a reaction that sent a pleasant warmth through Katherine. "Very professional," he said approvingly. "The council will be impressed." They walked together to the town hall, a modest building that served multiple purposes in the small community. Katherine was surprised by the number of people present, not just the council members, but many parents and other interested citizens. Victoria Caldwell was there, seated beside an older man who Katherine assumed was her father. She nodded coolly when Hunter greeted them, her eyes assessing Katherine with barely concealed disapproval. The meeting began with regular town business, giving Katherine time to observe the dynamics. Mayor Thompson, a portly man with an impressive mustache, clearly deferred to Mr. Caldwell on financial matters. Sheriff Davis reported briefly on minor disturbances and the need for additional deputies as the town grew. Finally, Mayor Thompson announced, "Next on our agenda, the matter of the school teacher position. Mrs. Wallace's condition will necessitate a replacement after Christmas. I understand we have a candidate present." Katherine stood, smoothing her skirt. "Yes, sir. My name is Katherine Morrison. I recently arrived in Rivercross with my 3 children." "We're aware," Sheriff Davis interjected. "What are your qualifications, Mrs. Morrison?" Katherine outlined her education and 4 years of teaching experience in Chicago, describing her approach to education and her belief in tailoring instruction to each child's abilities. She spoke confidently, years of classroom management serving her well as she addressed the sometimes skeptical faces. When she finished, Mayor Thompson nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Morrison. Are there questions from the council?" Mr. Caldwell leaned forward. "Mrs. Morrison, while your qualifications sound adequate, I must express concern about your situation. A widow with 3 young children, recently arrived with no connections or references we can verify. Teaching is a position of moral authority in our community." Katherine felt heat rise in her cheeks but kept her composure. "My husband died honorably, Mr. Caldwell, leaving me to support our family. I believe raising children alone demonstrates the very character and determination that makes a good teacher. And your current living arrangement." Victoria interjected smoothly. "Above Mr. Reid's store, I understand, hardly conventional." Katherine saw Hunter stiffen beside her. Before he could speak, Mrs. Wallace rose from her seat. "If I may," she said firmly, "Mrs. Morrison has been nothing but an asset to our community since her arrival. Her children are well behaved and bright, reflecting her excellent parenting. As for her living situation, Mr. Reid has provided temporary lodging as a Christian kindness, just as many in this town helped newcomers in the early days." She placed a protective hand on her belly. "I, for one, would be grateful to know our children will be taught by someone of Mrs. Morrison's caliber and character." Several parents murmured agreement, and Katherine felt a rush of gratitude toward the pregnant woman. Mayor Thompson cleared his throat. "Well said, Mrs. Wallace. Perhaps we should put it to a vote." To Katherine's relief, the vote was decisive, 4-1 in her favor, with only Mr. Caldwell opposing. She would begin after the Christmas holiday with a proper salary and the use of the small building already designated as the schoolhouse. As they left the meeting, Hunter placed a hand lightly on her back. "Congratulations, teacher," he said, his smile warming her despite the chilly evening. "Thank you," she replied, still processing the reality that she had secured a respectable position. "And thank you for your support." "I couldn't have done this without you." "Nonsense," Hunter said. "You earned this on your own merits." They were interrupted by Victoria, who approached with her father in tow. "Hunter, father and I are having a small gathering Friday evening. We'd be pleased if you'd attend." Hunter hesitated, glancing at Katherine. "Thank you, but I have inventory to complete before the supply wagon arrives Saturday." Mr. Caldwell frowned. Surely your assistant can manage that. Important banking matters to discuss, my boy. Again, Hunter hesitated, clearly torn between social obligation and his own preference. You should go, Katherine said quietly. I can handle the inventory. Hunter's eyes met hers, searching. Whatever he saw there made him nod slowly. Very well, thank you for the invitation. As the Caldwells walked away, Katherine felt a pang of something she didn't want to name. She had no claim on Hunter's time or attention, yet the thought of him at Victoria's gathering, with the woman clearly intending to stake her claim, left Katherine feeling hollow. Hunter seemed to sense her mood. It's just business, he said softly as they walked back toward the store. Nothing more, Katherine nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The evening that had begun so triumphantly now felt tainted by emotions she hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge. The days leading up to Friday were busy with normal store operations. Katherine threw herself into work, determined not to dwell on Hunter's upcoming evening with the Caldwells. The children sensed her preoccupation, but attributed it to excitement about her new teaching position. Friday evening arrived with a cold front that brought the first snow flurries of the season. Hunter closed the store early, disappearing into his quarters to prepare for the gathering. When he emerged, Katherine almost didn't recognize him. Gone was the practical storekeeper, replaced by a gentleman in a well-tailored suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and lean frame. He'd trimmed his beard and slicked back his hair, looking every inch the successful businessman. "Will this do?" he asked, oddly hesitant as Katherine stared. "You look very handsome," she managed, busying herself with straightening items that didn't need straightening. Hunter checked his pocket watch. "I shouldn't be late. The inventory lists are on my desk." "Don't wait up, these things can run long," Katherine nodded, not meeting his eyes. "Enjoy your evening." After he left, she put the children to bed earlier than usual, claiming fatigue. In truth, she needed solitude to sort through her tumultuous feelings. She had no right to feel jealous or possessive. Hunter had been nothing but kind and generous to her family, expecting nothing in return. If his future lay with Victoria Caldwell and her father's influence, who was Katherine to stand in the way? Yet as she sat at Hunter's desk, methodically working through the inventory lists, Katherine couldn't deny the ache in her chest. Somehow, in just a few weeks, this quiet, steady man had become central to her life, not just as a benefactor, but as someone whose presence she craved, whose smile could brighten her darkest days. "This is foolishness," she muttered to herself, forcing her attention back to the task at hand. Her priority had to be providing stability for her children, not indulging in romantic fantasies about a man who had never indicated he saw her as anything more than someone in need of assistance. The hours crept by, and despite her resolution not to wait up, Katherine found herself unable to retire. The inventory was long completed, the store prepared for tomorrow's supply delivery. She had moved to the small sitting area by the stove, a book open in her lap, though she'd read the same paragraph multiple times without comprehension. The sound of the back door opening startled her. Hunter appeared, looking weary and somewhat disheveled. His tie was loosened, and there was a tightness around his eyes that spoke of strain. "You're still awake," he observed, removing his coat and hanging it carefully. "Couldn't sleep," Katherine admitted. "How was your evening?" Hunter sank into the chair opposite her, running a hand through his hair. "Illuminating," he said after a moment. Katherine waited, sensing there was more. "Victoria's father made me an offer," Hunter continued. "Substantial expansion capital. Enough to double the size of the store, add specialty goods, maybe even open a second location in Cheyenne." "That sounds like an extraordinary opportunity," Katherine said carefully. Hunter's laugh held no humor. "It is, with certain conditions attached, Victoria," Katherine guessed softly. Hunter nodded, his eyes meeting hers. Marriage by spring, a mutually beneficial arrangement was how Caldwell phrased it. Katherine's heart constricted. "I see." "Do you?" Hunter asked, leaning forward. "Because I've spent the entire evening trying to see it myself. Trying to convince myself it makes perfect sense. Victoria is accomplished, educated from a good family. The alliance would secure my business future. And yet you don't seem pleased, Katherine observed, her voice barely above a whisper. Hunter stood abruptly, pacing the small space. How can I be? Marriage should be more than a business transaction, at least that's what I've always believed. He stopped, turning to face her. What was your marriage like, Katherine, if you don't mind my asking? The question caught her off guard. It was good. Robert was kind, hardworking. We had affection and respect. Love, Hunter asked quietly. Katherine considered this. A kind of love, yes, perhaps not the grand passion of novels, but a steady, comfortable love. Hunter nodded, resuming his seat. My parents had that. Not always easy. Life was hard, but they chose each other every day. I saw how they looked at each other, even after 20 years. He met her eyes directly. I want that, not a marriage of convenience that looks good on paper. Katherine's heart hammered in her chest. What did you tell Mr. Caldwell? That I needed time to consider, Hunter admitted. Cowardly, perhaps, but I couldn't bring myself to refuse outright. His influence in town is considerable. And if you refuse, Katherine asked. What then? Hunter shrugged. Life continues. The store does well enough as it is. I'm not a man who needs grand expansion to be content. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken feelings between them. Finally, Katherine rose. It's late. We should both get some rest. The supply wagon will be here early. Hunter stood as well, suddenly very close in the small space. Katherine, he said softly. The sound of small feet on the stairs interrupted whatever he had been about to say. Lily appeared in the doorway, her doll clutched tightly to her chest. Mama, I had a bad dream, she said tearfully. Katherine immediately went to her daughter, lifting her into her arms. It's all right, sweetheart, just a dream. She glanced back at Hunter. I should get her back to bed. Hunter nodded, the moment broken. Good night, Katherine, good night, little one. As Katherine carried Lily upstairs, she couldn't help wondering what Hunter had been about to say. The intensity in his eyes had suggested something important, something that might have changed everything. The supply wagon arrived at dawn, bringing with it the usual flurry of activity. Hunter and Katherine worked side by side, unloading crates and updating inventory, their conversation limited to practical matters. The previous night's almost moment hung between them, unacknowledged but impossible to forget. By midday, the new supplies were organized and the store had returned to its normal operation. Hunter disappeared into the storeroom to complete the paperwork for the delivery, leaving Katherine to manage the front. The bell above the door jingled and Katherine looked up to find Victoria Caldwell entering, immaculately dressed despite the snow that had begun falling in earnest. Mrs. Morrison, Victoria greeted her coolly. Is Hunter available? He's in the back with paperwork, Katherine replied. Would you like me to get him for you? Victoria assessed Katherine with calculating eyes. Actually, I was hoping for a word with you first, Katherine straightened, bracing herself. Of course. Victoria moved closer, lowering her voice though the store was empty. I'll be direct, Mrs. Morrison. Hunter is a good man, one of the finest in the territory. He's built something substantial here, something with real potential. I'm aware of Mr. Reid's qualities, Katherine replied evenly. Then you must also be aware that your situation places him in an awkward position, Victoria continued. A respectable businessman housing a widow and her children, it's causing talk. Katherine felt heat rise in her cheeks but kept her composure. Mr. Reid has been nothing but proper and generous. Any talk is merely idle gossip. Victoria's smile was tight, perhaps. But perception matters in business. Hunter has worked too hard to have his reputation tarnished by association with a woman of uncertain background. My background is not uncertain, Miss Caldwell, Katherine said firmly. I was a teacher and a wife. Now I'm a widow doing her best for her children. There's nothing shameful in that. Of course not, Victoria agreed smoothly. But surely you can see that Hunter deserves a partner who enhances his standing in the community, not someone who might diminish it. Someone who brings advantages to the relationship, rather than 3 additional mouths to feed. The cruel assessment struck Katherine like a physical blow. Before she could respond, Hunter's voice came from behind her. That's enough, Victoria. Both women turned to find him standing in the storeroom doorway, his expression thunderous. Victoria recovered quickly. "Hunter, I was just having a friendly chat with Mrs. Morrison." "I heard what you said," Hunter replied, his voice dangerously quiet, and there was nothing friendly about it. Victoria's composure slipped slightly. "I was merely pointing out practical considerations. You were insulting a woman who has shown more strength and dignity in adversity than most people show in comfort," Hunter interrupted. "Mrs. Morrison and her children are under my protection and have my highest respect. Anyone who cannot extend them the same courtesy is not welcome in this store." The color drained from Victoria's face. "You can't mean that. Your father's business is always welcome," Hunter said firmly. "But I won't tolerate disrespect toward Katherine or her children, regardless of the source." Victoria stared at him, then at Katherine, sudden understanding dawning in her eyes. "I see," she said coldly. "Father was right. You've already made your choice." Without another word, she turned and left, the door closing firmly behind her. The silence that followed was profound. Katherine stood frozen, processing what had just happened. "I'm sorry you had to hear that," Hunter finally said, moving to stand beside her. "Did you mean it?" Katherine asked, her voice barely audible. "What you said about respect," Hunter turned to face her directly. "Every word," he said softly. "Katherine, the door opened again, this time admitting Mrs. Jenkins with Lily in tow. The moment was broken as Lily ran to her mother, chattering excitedly about the cookies she'd helped bake. As Mrs. Jenkins shared news of the increasingly heavy snowfall, Hunter moved away, returning to his paperwork in the storeroom. Katherine engaged with Mrs. Jenkins and Lily automatically, her mind still reeling from the confrontation with Victoria and Hunter's unexpected defense. Later that evening, as a full-blown snowstorm howled outside, Katherine sat with her children in their small apartment. The warmth of the stove and the security of solid walls around them was a luxury she didn't take for granted after their desperate journey. Emma looked up from the book she was reading. "Mama, are we staying here forever now?" The question caught Katherine off guard. "We have the apartment until I begin teaching, at least. Why do you ask?" Emma considered this. "I like it here. Mr. Reid is nice. He helps Samuel with his whittling and doesn't mind when Lily asks too many questions." She hesitated. "He looks at you the way Papa used to." Katherine felt her cheeks warm. "Emma, Mr. Reid has been kind to us because he's a good man, that's all." Samuel looked up from his own project. "He told me he never had children of his own, but if he did, he'd want a boy just like me." Katherine's heart clenched at this revelation. "He said that?" Samuel nodded earnestly. "When we were fishing last week, he said you were brave and strong too, like his mama was." Katherine didn't know how to respond to these innocent observations that revealed so much about Hunter's feelings he had never directly expressed to her. A knock at the door saved her from having to reply. Opening it, she found Hunter holding a covered tray. "Thought you might like some hot cocoa," he said. "Storm's getting worse, might lose the stove's heat up here if it keeps up." Katherine accepted the tray. "Thank you." "Would you like to join us?" Hunter hesitated, then nodded. "For a bit, if I'm not intruding." The children welcomed him enthusiastically, making space at the small table. As they sipped the rich cocoa, the storm's howling seemed distant and unimportant compared to the warmth of the small room and the companionship they shared. Later, after the children had been tucked into bed, Katherine and Hunter sat by the stove, the last of the cocoa growing cold in their cups. "Katherine," Hunter began hesitantly, "about what happened with Victoria today." "You don't owe me any explanation," Katherine interrupted. "Your business relationships are your own affair." Hunter shook his head. "That's just it. They're not simply business anymore." He took a deep breath. "I told Caldwell this afternoon that I couldn't accept his offer, any of it." Katherine's eyes widened. "But the expansion opportunity isn't worth the price," Hunter finished firmly. "I've been thinking about what you said last night about your marriage, about comfort and respect." He met her gaze directly. "I want more than that, Katherine. I want someone who makes me feel alive, someone whose courage and determination I admire, someone whose smile I look forward to every morning." Katherine's heart hammered in her chest. "Hunter, let me finish, please," he said gently. I know it's too soon. Your husband's been gone less than a year. You're just beginning to find your footing again. I don't expect anything. But I wanted you to know that whatever Victoria implied, you and your children have brought something to my life that no business expansion could ever match. Tears pricked at Catherine's eyes. We've been a burden to you. Never, Hunter said firmly, reaching across to take her hand. A revelation, perhaps, a reminder of what matters. He squeezed her fingers gently. I'm not asking for anything, Katherine, just time. Time to show you that there might be a future here if you want it. Katherine looked down at their joined hands, emotions swirling through her. I never expected to feel this way again, she admitted softly. After Robert died, I thought that part of my life was over. My only focus was surviving, keeping the children safe. And you've done that admirably, Hunter said. Whatever happens between us, you should be proud of what you've accomplished. Katherine met his eyes, seeing the warmth and sincerity there. Time would be good, she agreed, for all of us. Hunter nodded, rising reluctantly. The storm's easing, I should let you rest. At the door, he turned back. Good night, Katherine. Good night, Hunter, she replied, the simple exchange now charged with new meaning. As winter settled over Rivercross, Katherine and Hunter fell into a new rhythm. Nothing overtly changed in their daily interactions, but there was an undercurrent of awareness, of possibility that colored every conversation, every shared glance. The children, with the uncanny perception of the young, sensed the shift. They increasingly included Hunter in their activities and conversations, unconsciously creating a family unit where none had formally existed. Christmas approached, bringing with it preparations for Katherine's new teaching position. The town council, now fully supportive, provided funds for basic supplies and books. Hunter contributed shelves and furniture from the store's inventory, helping to transform the simple building into a proper classroom. One evening in mid-December, as they worked together organizing the schoolroom, Hunter broached a subject that had clearly been on his mind. Christmas is coming, he observed, watching Katherine arrange books on a newly installed shelf. Have you given thought to what you'll do for the children? Katherine sighed. It will be modest this year, I'm afraid. My first teaching payment won't come until January. Hunter nodded, seemingly casual. I was thinking, the store always has a special display for Christmas. Toys, candies, practical items. Would it be inappropriate if I? That is, I'd like to make sure the children have something special. Katherine paused in her work, touched by his thoughtfulness. That's very kind, but I can't accept such generosity. You've done so much already. Hunter approached, taking the books from her hands and setting them aside. Katherine, please, let me do this, not as charity, but as... He hesitated, searching for the right words, as someone who cares deeply for them and for you. The sincerity in his eyes made refusal impossible. They would be thrilled, she admitted. But I insist on helping in the store extra hours to compensate. Hunter smiled, relieved. Agreed, though your company is compensation enough. Katherine felt a blush rise to her cheeks, still unaccustomed to such open admiration. What about you? Will you visit family for the holiday? A shadow crossed Hunter's face. No, my mother passed 5 years ago. My brothers are scattered, one in California, 2 back east. We write, but travel's difficult. Then you must celebrate with us, Katherine said impulsively. I may not have much, but I can prepare a proper Christmas dinner. The smile that lit Hunter's face was worth any effort such a meal might require. I'd like that very much. As they walked back to the store through gently falling snow, Hunter's hand found hers, warm even through their gloves. It was a small gesture, but significant, their first public acknowledgement that whatever was growing between them was more than friendship. Christmas morning dawned clear and bitterly cold. Katherine woke early to prepare cinnamon rolls from a recipe her mother had taught her, a tradition she'd maintained even through the leanest times. The aroma filled the small apartment, soon rousing the children from their beds. Is it Christmas, Mama? Lily asked sleepily, clutching her doll. It is, sweetheart, Katherine confirmed, smoothing her daughter's tousled hair. And we have much to be grateful for this year. The modest gifts Katherine had prepared hand-knitted scarves for Emma and Samuel. A new dress for Lily's doll sewn from fabric scraps were received with genuine appreciation. But when Hunter arrived, carrying a large sack over his shoulder like a frontier Santa Claus, the children's excitement reached new heights. "Mr. Reid," Samuel exclaimed. "Are those for us?" Hunter grinned, setting down the sack. Some are for your mother. And I believe there might be something in here for a certain doll as well." The next hour was filled with exclamations of delight as the children unwrapped their treasures: a set of carved animals for Samuel, a beautiful illustrated book of fairy tales for Emma, and a tiny tea set for Lily's doll. For Katherine, Hunter had chosen a fine woolen shawl in deep blue and a leather-bound journal. "For your teaching notes," he explained as she ran her fingers over the smooth cover, "or whatever thoughts you wish to preserve." Katherine blinked back tears, overwhelmed by his thoughtfulness. "It's perfect, thank you." Her own gift to Hunter was modest by comparison, a hand-knitted scarf in rich brown that had consumed her evening hours for weeks. But his reaction, the careful way he handled it, the genuine pleasure in his eyes made clear that its value to him far exceeded its practical worth. "I've never had something made just for me," he admitted, wrapping it around his neck. "It's the finest gift I've received in years." The Christmas dinner that followed was simple, but abundant: a roast chicken with potatoes and carrots, fresh bread, and an apple pie that filled the apartment with its spicy fragrance. They ate at the small table, crowded but content, the children chattering excitedly about their gifts and the upcoming school term. As dusk fell, Hunter helped Katherine clear the dishes while the children played with their new treasures. Standing side by side at the small sink, their shoulders occasionally brushing, Katherine was struck by how natural it felt, this domestic intimacy, this shared task. "Thank you," she said softly. "Not just for today, but for everything since we arrived. I don't know what would have become of us if you hadn't offered your help that day." Hunter set down the dish he was drying, turning to face her. "Katherine, meeting you and the children was the best thing that's happened to me in years, perhaps ever." He hesitated, then continued. "I know we agreed on time, and I respect that, but I want you to know that my feelings have only grown stronger these past months." Katherine set aside the cloth she was holding, her heart pounding. "Mine as well," she admitted. "The children adore you, and I—" She trailed off, finding it difficult to articulate the depth of her feelings. Hunter took her hands in his. "I understand if you're not ready. Robert will always be part of your life, part of who you are. I would never ask you to forget him." "It's not that," Katherine said softly. "Robert will always have a place in my heart as the father of my children, but what I feel for you is different, stronger in some ways." She met his eyes directly. "I never expected to love again, Hunter, but I do. I love you." The words, once spoken, seemed to transform the air between them. Hunter's eyes widened, then softened with such tenderness that Katherine felt tears threatening again. "Katherine," he whispered, raising one hand to cup her cheek, "I love you too, more than I thought possible." Their first kiss was gentle, a question and an answer at once. Katherine's heart soared as Hunter's arms encircled her, providing the strength and security she had craved for so long. When they finally parted, both a little breathless, Hunter rested his forehead against hers. "I don't want to rush you, but I need to ask. Would you consider making this permanent, becoming a family officially?" Katherine smiled, joy bubbling up from some deep wellspring she'd thought long dry. "Are you proposing, Mr. Reid?" Hunter chuckled. "Not very romantically, I'm afraid." "I had planned something more elaborate, perhaps in the spring." He sobered. "But today, seeing you with the children, sharing this home we've created, I couldn't wait any longer." "Yes," Katherine said simply. "Yes, I will marry you, Hunter Reid." The sound of small gasps made them turn. The children stood in the doorway, wide-eyed and silent for a moment. Katherine feared their reaction. Then Emma stepped forward. "Does this mean Mr. Reid will be our new papa?" Hunter knelt to the child's level. "Only if you want me to be, Emma. I love your mother very much, and I love all of you too, but I know your father will always be special to you." Emma considered this solemnly. "Papa would want us to be happy, and Mama smiles more when you're here." Samuel nodded agreement. "And you teach me things like Papa did." Lily, not fully comprehending but sensing the importance of the moment, simply held up her arms to Hunter, who lifted her easily. "Then it's settled," he said, his voice rough with emotion as he extended his free arm to include Catherine, Emma, and Samuel in an embrace. "We're going to be a family." As the new year dawned, bringing with it Catherine's first day of teaching and preparations for a spring wedding, the story of how she had arrived in Rivercross desperate, hungry, with children she couldn't feed became something of a town legend. But it was the second part of the story that people loved most, how a kind-hearted storekeeper had said, "My table is yours now," and in doing so had found not just a wife but a family, transforming a simple act of generosity into a lifetime of love. The wedding took place on a perfect April day, with apple blossoms scenting the air and the whole town in attendance. Even Victoria Caldwell came, her initial resentment softened by her recent engagement to a wealthy rancher from Cheyenne. As Catherine and Hunter exchanged vows, her children standing proudly beside them, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From the depths of despair to the heights of joy, from hunger to abundance, from loneliness to love all, because a good man had seen a family in need and opened not just his table, but his heart. And as Hunter slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, his eyes shining with love and promise, Catherine knew with absolute certainty that their table and their life together would always have room for more love, more joy, and perhaps, someday, more children to complete the family that had begun with a simple act of kindness on a dusty Wyoming road.